Alright guys, just wanted to go over the testing for this week. I'm going to take it one day at a time, just kind of discuss why we're doing it in the order that we're doing it in and the different tests that we're doing. So today we've got a back squat test, 85% NME test, neuromuscular efficiency, seated press, weighted pull-up, and then handstand push-up test. And if the noise is bad, there's some construction going on in the background, so sorry about that. First, I just wanted to test some strength stuff first. If we do aerobic stuff first, it's going to affect our strength stuff, and the other way around doesn't really affect it that much. So I'm looking at back squat at that tempo. I always use a tempo when we're testing just to keep it the same. If you go 5 seconds on the way down this time, and then 3 weeks from now you do 2 seconds on the way down, I'm not really sure if you get stronger. It may have just been because of the change in time under tension. So always have a tempo to keep it the same when you're testing. 85% test, 1 set of max reps at that tempo, making sure the tempo is the same, again, to keep consistency throughout the test. This is testing your neuromuscular efficiency, basically seeing how good you are at firing for 1 explosive rep. If you get 3 to 4 reps, you're considered high neuromuscular efficiency. 3 to 4 reps or less, you're considered high neuromuscular efficiency. 4 to 6 reps, you're kind of in the middle range, and then 7 reps or above, low neuromuscular efficiency on this. Back up a little bit, the reason we do the back squat, obviously just a good raw lower body strength test. We'll compare that, that's kind of our baseline for all other tests, consider deadlift, clean and jerk, snatch, front squat, even compared to close grip bench press and other things for looking at balance. So again, the insight for this is just basically kind of looking at where you are to start. There's no real good or bad in neuromuscular efficiency. It depends on the sport and kind of what you're looking for. So it's just kind of giving us insight into what kind of training will likely be better for you. If you're low neuromuscular efficiency, higher volume sets is going to probably be better for you. Sorry about that. So that's some insight into goals for CrossFit. Goals for CrossFit is going to be to increase both of these, meaning increase your 1 rep max and also increase the number of reps you get at 85%. So that would be something specific to CrossFit. We want both of those to increase as opposed to just increasing your back squat, but your NME going down, or your number of reps at 85% goes down. That's not going to really be what we want for CrossFit. So we want both those numbers to increase and be able to do higher reps or closer to your 1 rep max. Seated press and weighted pull-up. So I'm using the seated press. I personally haven't tested this as much, so I'm implementing this a little bit more. I think it's going to add a little bit more complications as far as flexibility and good movement patterns. And in that seated position, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. And we're going to compare the percentage to that versus the weighted pull-up to give us some upper body relative strength numbers. And that's going to, weighted pull-up is going to include your body weight, so we'll talk about that after the testing. This is just looking at balance between the two, upper body pressing versus upper body pulling. We want those to be balanced, which doesn't necessarily mean 1-to-1, depending on the test. So if it's close grip bench press versus weighted pull-up or dumbbell press, there's a dumbbell press test that we'll do too. So there's some different tests to look at for balance, and I'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the results. And then the 1 to 10 handstand push-up ladder, obviously pressing strength relative to body weight is going to be a factor, but it's also a kind of a pacing and a muscle endurance. It's also going to give you some insight into your structure. People who have good structure are going to be able to do this faster than those who have poor structure. So what I mean by that is good mechanics overhead. If their scapular retraction and movement in the scaps is good, and their mobility overhead is good, they're going to have a better test on this than maybe somebody with the same relative 1 rep max strength relative to their body weight. The person with better structure is going to do better on this test, so they're not going to fatigue out as quick because of that. It's also kind of a know yourself pacing kind of thing because it has to be unbroken. So especially as you get into that 7, 8, 9, 10 rep range, you have to make sure you rest long enough to make sure you get those unbroken and not jump in too early. So it's a bit of a pressing muscular endurance, also knowing your body and just looking at that structure of that. So we're going to compare that later on to an upper body pulling test that we're going to do later in the week, which will again give us some insight into balance, upper body pulling versus pressing as far as endurance goes. So that's what we're going to look at. So that's kind of an overview for today. Hope that helps. Post all your numbers and we'll keep going.